Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Headhunter Hideout. It's your host, Joel Lalgee here. I would love to know who is out there. So if you're out there, get into the chat. Let me know who you are and where you're coming in from. But we're super excited today to have Kathleen Steffey with us. She's the founder and CEO of Naviga Recruiting. And you know what? She's also an unapologetic dog person, which I saw that on your profile. I love it. So welcome to the show. It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
I'd love for you just to give a quick introduction of who you are and a little bit about your firm as well. And then we can get into the major discussion here. I know there's a lot to talk about. So welcome on.
Thank you. Who I am, I mean, I can
30-second elevator pitch. That's all you got.
Who I am. Okay, so I started in recruiting, about 25 years ago at an agency for like 3 months. And it was a general agency. We hired IT people, admin people out of Chicago. And then one of my clients recruited me to become their corporate recruiter in technology recruiting. And so my background is coming from the corporate recruiting side of things, mostly with software and technology. And then moving on over to owning Naviga now for 19 years. I've owned Naviga for 19 years. And I know it's crazy. And we only specialize in placing sales, marketing, and operations people in the United States, but for worldwide businesses. So
I love it. I love it. So when you got into recruitment originally, if I talked to Kathleen back then and said, hey, you're going to own a recruitment company, you're going to work internationally, you're going to have a team, all this sort of stuff, like what? Would that have been a surprise to you back then? Walk me through that.
No. I mean, I always outperformed, and I this is just the honest truth. Like I always worked harder than whoever was to the left and right of me, from a recruiting standpoint. And I kind of had a knack for developing relationships with my internal hiring managers, and I would go through a discovery process internally, similar to what we do at Naviga with our, external customers. So I didn't know that, let's say I'd own a firm, this long. I guess it does surprise me how well I took to it, and how I love owning a recruiting firm and how it's still not gotten old for me after all these years.
No, I love it. Well, I mean, you went from corporate recruiting into owning an agency. So that's probably, a lot of times it's, hey, I'm working at an agency, I get annoyed and because they're taking too much of my commission. Now I'm going to start my own thing.
Yeah.
That wasn't your path. So it's unique in that way. What do you think you've done? Because again, a lot of agencies that start that way, they can struggle to scale and have like a business that is autonomously running and that. So what do you think you would have done kind of differently to maybe other people that just start an agency? Like what are some of the things that you've done differently given that corporate experience, if that makes sense?
Great question. I didn't follow agency structure rules. I've kind of morphed a corporate recruiting operation with agency life, if that makes sense. Like I've always been focused on marketing. I've always been focused on account management. I've been focused on the process of calibrating and understanding what this position is and how it fits into the business, like working at a much higher level to impress, my internal and external customers. So it hasn't been a traditional recruiting model, if you will, where it's like, all right, you're going to work a full desk, 100% commission situation to go get the business and close the business. Whereas we get the business and we get a lot of it, and my recruiters just focus on filling it. Always. That's always how it's been. So that's kind of the interesting kind of hybrid that I think my mentality brought to the structure, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I think we talked about this right before, before even just hopping on the live, that I think the full desk model at times, it can incentivize the wrong thing, especially when people are starting. if you're sending somebody out there with zero experience and basically saying, go generate your own business.
Yeah.
It's a massive challenge. Do you think that, and this is just in your opinion, so I won't hold you to this, but do you think that type of full desk model is one that is getting less and less viable with people who are joining the recruitment agency world, or do you still see that as like, hey, that's a great way to go if it's right for you? What are your thoughts on that? And that's kind of a large question, big question.
It's so conflicting in my brain, and we could peel this back probably for hours, but I feel that when you're selling an intangible service, even though we're selling a person, right? We're not selling an actual hard product. We're selling a person. So it's intangible. You have to be selling based on value, right? In creating a solution for a customer. So if you're just sending, let's say, a candidate out blindly to see if it'll stick, you're missing so many different steps in order to have a win-win, based on culture, environment, what you learn through that calibration, discussion with the hiring manager. So the selling process for me has never been one where, great, I have a job order, let me fill it. I mean, there's just so many other quality measurements that we ask in order to even know it's something we will work.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I have conflict with that model to begin with, from a just cold calling, because once you get the job, you kind of have to step away and peel it back 10 times over with that customer before signing the contract in order to know if you even are going to have this deal win, if you're going to have a win-win,
Well, yeah, and I think that's exactly what doesn't happen in that environment, because you get the job order and then suddenly you've got 5 job orders, especially in a market like this. I mean,
yeah,
people are like, I'm busy with job orders. Okay, how many of those are you filling? That's always a question. So
yeah,
I think when you're in that situation, you get a job order and then suddenly the business development goes down and you fall on the candidates, you fill that, or maybe you don't, and then suddenly it's a big endless circle. What's your I'm curious on the client side and how you built. I mean, what does client retention look like, in your world and in your business? Is you got a high client retention rate, or how do you go on and measure that in terms of just those overall relationships?
Yeah, we do have a high client retention rate. And it has to do with filling the jobs they give us. I'm pretty proud of that. It's an interesting dance we're doing right now because we have so many outbound leads coming in who want to do business with us where we've never done business with them before. But client repeated business from our existing clients is at an all-time high. So we're having to really, really be careful on what we're taking in so we can serve our existing customers, because we want to be partnering with them forever. So it's a fine line. We do have internal, proactive strategies that we use for our existing customers, from a marketing standpoint to stay in front of them. But I really feel the number one thing that helps retaining existing customers is filling the job and doing it with, a high level of professionalism and quality. It's pretty big.
Yeah, I love it. And all right, so walk me through this too. I know, again, we talked about this a couple months ago when we first chatted, but you built a whole business on inbound, which I love.
You do.
Now, obviously, I'm really bullish on LinkedIn content and being that kind of content creator, but that's not the only way to produce inbound leads, obviously. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you got started with really getting traction with inbound, and then the impact that has had on your business and how that's kind of played into your overall philosophy of how you run things.
Yeah. I think back in 2008 is when we started dabbling and said, we need to be progressive with our marketing in order to have them come to us, but mostly to become an expert or be viewed as an expert in sales and marketing, recruiting, and not just somebody who recruits, like somebody who understands the space, right? So we started with blogging. We created a blog called salesjournal.com. What a URL, right?
Seriously, That within itself has to be worth a chunk right there.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And we still have rights to it and we own it. And so what we did is we pushed out tons of content there. At the time I paid somebody, to develop content around, best practices associated with sales hiring, best practices associated with coaching, all things sales and marketing best practices. And we would push that out to our customers to show them a value add with newsletters. Okay. We also, at that time, we had a pretty hefty spend for my size business. We're a boutique firm, and we were spending about $100,000 a year on PPC. Okay. And at that time, the only competitors that I have were those who could afford PPC, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't anybody doing organic and SEO back then. It just wasn't happening. But in time, as we developed more and more content, way before LinkedIn, more and more blog content, pushing it out to our customers, we started then diversifying into Twitter and doing some pretty cool things there, and then LinkedIn and some Facebook, but I'm still not convinced about that for me. But then we said, you know what? Let's see how much traffic's coming in organically. We started decreasing our budget in time for PPC and then leveled off to zero budget on PPC, which I haven't for years. And our leads are up, and they have been,
Wow.
probably for 10 years now consistently. So it's been a beautiful situation. And you asked, how do I think that has maybe defined our culture or impacted our overall business? And it goes back to what I was just saying. If you can develop a consistent lead source like we have, what a beautiful situation it is to be able to choose who I do business with, right? And evaluate employers around the world just as much as they're evaluating us. So it's a mutual conversation that we have when they're contacting us, and it gives us the confidence, the ability, the swagger, if you will, to respond to these people in a very high level professional manner and walk through them as a partner, not somebody begging to do business with them. It changes the game.
I love that, and I feel like there's like 10 sound bites in there as well that I could
right
take. But I do think that I don't think you always understand, I think, especially in sales, like when you set a meeting, that's a good feeling. And then when you get into the meeting, there's always that sense of, okay, I got to prove myself. I've got to show why I'm credible, why I'm great at what I do. And I think that's from an outbound strategy. But like you say, when you start to experience inbound and you start to, think of a job order intake when it's inbound, you're asking the same questions maybe, but the way that you're getting answers is way different, and I've experienced this where, you can pull someone through a job intake call with their hand behind their back and they don't really want to tell you anything because they don't really trust you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But when somebody's come to you inbound, it's like right away that trust level's up because they've initiated it. They've done their research.
Yeah.
And I would argue that, if you can get a steady flow of those, why would you ever try and do the outbound where you're trying to push and trust?
Yeah.
Just try and build that trust factor. So I love that. I think within the recruitment world, it's a challenge because, again, that mindset isn't there, like you said, of being that consultant and that value add. And I think if that isn't there in your culture, it's hard to pass that on. What does onboarding look like for you? Like when you bring a new recruiter onto the team and you're looking to expand, how do you bring people into an operation like you have, whereas inbound, as opposed to just like that classic outbound activity? How do you bring someone into that?
Yeah. I just bring them in and I teach them how to recruit. Mostly I look for values and hard work ethic and character. And I teach them my way of operation, because if they're coming, this is short-sighted, I'm sure, people from other types of operations, but what I've seen is that if they're coming from an agency that's learned in a very different way, it's hard to change their mindset in what I'm trying to display. Like, it's a professional corporate approach that I'm doing here. It's not it's not just seeing what sticks, and the type of leadership that I have as well with my team. It's one that challenges them to do better. It's coaching them. It's not berating them. It's making them grow into somebody who can handle a job order that, pays $500,000 a year. So every step of the way with my recruiters, it's really almost like this is like a child in college, or excuse me, in school. You're guiding them, you're facilitating, you're helping them along the way, and seeing how far they can go on their own, and watching them make a lot of mistakes, and having the patience, to handle those mistakes, and making sure they're catching on and things like that. So does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And again, I think the onboarding of people into our industry is a challenge. I think it's hard to bring people in and have them be successful. And if you look at that first year, I always just look at that first year and just think the amount of people that just start and then,
I know,
but a lot of that, to me, in my own personal opinion, again, it's only an opinion, I really do think that that's to do with environment and training and understanding the skill sets that people have over just going, well, they're not cut out for it, especially with full desk. And I think now when I look at the graphs of how many openings there are for recruiters, it's insane. Yeah. And to me, that's more of an issue of just training and equipping people for modern day success as it is there just not being enough people that can do the job. That's what you jump on that. So we just got a couple people too. I just wanted to get to the chat. We got Renee here. She said fantastic. So you've got a fan with Renee there. And then we want to say hi to Krista, who just said first time listening live and looking forward to it. Krista, always good to see you. If you guys have any questions as well, about recruitment, job search, anything like that, feel free to ask them and we'll try and get to those questions as well. But I don't, you brought up something interesting about right now you've got too many leads, you got too much business coming in, which is, from what I've heard from a lot of other people, a lot of people are kind of overwhelmed business wise. So how are you picking and choosing? Walk us through a little bit about how you go, this is a client we want to work with, and this is maybe one which we don't want to work with, but how do you make that choice when you've got that many leads coming in? Yeah.
Well, I don't want to say I have too much business. I don't ever want to say that. I think that sounds a certain way.
Well, you've got a lot, and hey, everybody who's out there, if you're in recruitment, you know exactly what we're talking about here. You got a lot of people coming to you wanting to work and fill those roles. I guess that's a better way to put it.
All right. Yes, that creates some challenges and a different environment to work. So what was your question?
How do you decide like what's the priority here? How do you figure out whether or not a partnership makes sense for both parties?
Okay. So I'll talk about the partnership making sense, and then I'll tell you how we kind of determine priorities. Okay. Partnership that makes sense. Somebody who can pay a retainer up front. We're a retained firm. A discussion with the hiring manager up front to understand a lot of different moving parts in order to know if we're going to have a win-win.
How long is that discussion, would you say? Like what amount of time would you need?
Maybe, so my director probably has maybe a 30-minute conversation in order to really understand. I mean, she's been doing this for me for a really long time now. Like I'm talking 13, 14 years. So she's got it down if somebody's going to work out or not, employer-wise. So she does a lot of filtering. And then through our calibration call, that's about an hour-long video with the hiring manager, HR, whoever, our key decision makers. And we're asking a lot of really, really smart questions, that gets us places. And we'll even ask, what have you done up to this point? Why are you contacting us? Do you have any internals still in the process that you're evaluating? And if they do, we take a step.
Oh yeah, the old, hey, 6 months into the process, you know what? We're just going to go with this guy. He's been with us for 10 years.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Or hey, we're thinking about terminating somebody and but we're not ready yet. We've been down that road a million times. They end up not terminating them. It's just this dance that you do to like decipher, almost like mold the search are we going to make money or not? And, we go through this back and forth. And I think there's a real skill and a strategy to doing this. And it's important. It's critical because by the time these jobs get to my recruiters, I want them to fill it. And so if we don't fill it, we're talking about what the heck happened on either the client side or our side to prevent us from filling it. And what didn't we talk to our customers about during that search to solve the problem? So you know what I'm saying? That's working at a high level. It's just not taking something in and just not filling it. We're really partnering with our customers on it. So
so when you were in corporate, did you have any client or any partners that you worked with that operated in the same way that you do right now?
So partners like hiring managers or corporate recruiters or?
Yes, as a corporate recruiter, were you working with any third parties that would have a process like that? No. Okay.
Not at all. Yeah.
I love that because then it's like you had that, you know what it's like to work with a third party. You know what what the frustrations are with it, so you're able to pinpoint all of those as well.
Yeah.
What are you seeing right now with like the jobs that are, or the job offers that are going out? Are you seeing what are you seeing people who are securing offers and making hires right now doing that those that are losing out aren't doing? I mean, obviously it sounds like you have a lot of success, but with partners you've seen, like what are things that people are doing right now that are just a no-go with the current environment that we have?
They're too slow.
They're always speed. You think it's just all speed?
Employers are slow or they're being too picky. That being said, like our average is generally one person gets hired out of 4 submits. And in the last 6 months, we're 2 submits to 1 hire or 3 submits to 1 hire. So we're trending where customers are making decisions faster right now. But you pose the question, what do they do to mess up? And they won't move fast, or they're not paying competitively, or their interview process is absolutely ridiculous, where they're putting so many different like bells and whistles in place to piss candidates off, where like an A player, if they don't have to jump through hoops, here, but they do here, and it's all things are equal, they're not going to jump through hoops. So they've really got to watch these things, these steps in their process and how they're behaving in the marketplace and their perception in the marketplace. It's critical. So,
is that something that you're able to uncover then if you're working with a new client? That's what you're able to uncover.
Yes.
Kickoff and calibration. You're able to get a feel for how quickly or how slow they might move and kind of help guide them in that.
Yes. And sometimes we don't get it right. Like we took on a customer recently and they started showing a lot of behaviors. We thought we could change them up front, almost like dating, I swear. We thought we could change them up front. We coached them on, changing up their interview process, this and that. And, push comes to shove, they didn't. And so, we're returning the retainer on our accord. We said, I'm not messing with this. Like, we've got so much business. Here's your retainer. Yeah, I gave you a few candidates. That's fine. Let's just call it here what it is, and good luck to you. In a really professional way. But it's just all about getting the quality jobs on your plate and being really smart about what you're working right now, like crazy smart. And then advising the customer up front, sniffing out what's not going to work in this marketplace. We have our spiel. We're coaching them on those calls, those first calls, those second calls, on best practices, what our top customers are doing right now to get talent. This is what they're doing. I really advise you to do XYZ. So these are the types of conversations we're having.
Yeah, I mean, you need to be having it. But I think that most, again, going back to like a contingent model, or not even just contingent, but going to kind of that more of that transactional model, that's what you don't get, is you don't get the consulting piece, and you don't really get to influence things like the speed of hire and how quickly you're moving things. Yeah. Okay, so kind of speed's obviously an issue, and I've heard this a lot, and people are moving. It seems like people are moving faster, but how do you move fast and still get what you need from culture fit, a technical fit. You also mentioned thinking a little bit outside of the box. So if you're going to go that direction and maybe think a little bit outside of the box, you're going to move fast. Like, how do you ensure that you still are making like a quality decision? Because it's obviously a big deal, and you're dealing with higher level roles. So how do you kind of manage that and coach clients through that?
Lots of practice, lots of experience, lots of coaching. It's really on the recruiter and the fundamentals, and sticking to those fundamentals. So you are killing it when you're in the game and not slipping from those fundamentals. I really associate it with hockey, right? Like, so, they learn all these techniques and all these skill sets, and they're working really hard and fast to get the puck in the net. Same here. Like, when we have an economy now that we need to move quicker, we can't just lose the fundamentals and all these techniques. You need to stay the course. So it's my job in circumstances that get like this, right? In higher volume, where we need to be more competitive, we're playing up against, let's say, teams that could kick our ass. What do we need to do? We need to not make as many mistakes, right, on the ice. Yep. P.S. Yep. I didn't plan this association. I just love hockey.
No, I love it.
But you hear what I'm saying. You stick to the fundamentals, you will do good. Work at a high professional, level and approach, and you got this. Stick to the fundamentals. Don't cut corners. Don't make a lot of mistakes. Work at a high level of quality, and we'll get it done. So it's really the coach's job, my job, to make sure the team stays the course in an environment like we're in right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's massive. And then I think, another question I'm curious about. Okay. So with how technology is advancing, I know we talked a little bit about inbound. Are you guys seeing just a switch in how people are communicating, or like, what are some things that you've had to change, particularly with, I just think of the pandemic, with people working from home and not being necessarily as accessible. Like, how are you kind of keeping your team fresh and creative when it comes to outreach and connecting to people? Like, how do you keep your team fresh with those types of tactics?
Yeah. Well, I guess I could think about something that I coached them on just last week, and it was our messaging on LinkedIn to create more value on the upfront. We say enough to make sure that they know we're not playing around. Like, we say enough in our first messaging, but then when we're responding, in order to catch and get their information right, so they don't think we're spammy, it's important we identified that follow through to tell them exactly what our process is and why we're asking for this, right? And just that approach alone, like my recruiters last week were screenshotting and saying, look at what the candidate just said to my follow-on. They were like, thank you. I never get this amount of like information about what your process will be. And I will tell you, I'm impressed. Like, just by them changing their verbiage and offering up. And so in this marketplace, it's important because they're getting hit by so many people right now. And so you have to say, how do we show them we're not full of crap? How do we show them we're not like everyone else, and that we're actually operating at a high level and we're a retained firm, and I actually work with worldwide companies that I have a position for. And it's all in the way that you communicate to them in your process. So little things like that can impact the entire like recruiting process.
Yeah, no, I mean, someone's been, or I've seen it kind of brought up a lot on LinkedIn recently, the set like salary. And I don't know what your take is on this, but I've seen a lot of like LinkedIn polls in particular. I ran one myself, and I asked, like, should we show salary on a job description, for example? And 98% of people that answered, I think there's 3,000 or 4,000 people answered, they said yes. And I'm not saying whether I agree or disagree, but what that shows is, I think you have to think about how buyers, you have to think about how just people in general were more informed, and we like to find things out and we like to know up front. So if you know that about people, I love what you said about outlining the process. I think that is really unique, and just saying, hey, this is what you're going to expect if you're working with me, compared to, hey, I might have an opportunity that you might be a good fit for, and I may have this. Do you have 10 minutes to connect? That's just, you're not going to be able to get through and break the noise. So I think if you can be specific, and I love that, showing the process. What about like from a monitoring standpoint and performance standpoint? How do you monitor people, or I guess keep them accountable within your recruitment process? What are some things that how do you keep people accountable to do their jobs, if that makes sense?
Candidates or my team?
Your team internally, like,
oh, well,
phone time? Just
no. Well, it's interesting. I don't get them to be anything. I show them the path to be something, and then they become that person. And I don't, I don't have to press. I don't have to push to get them to work. And that's the one thing that I evaluate up front. Are you a hard worker? Because if I've got to do that, I told you back in the day, that was my biggest differentiator. You said, have I ever envisioned myself to be doing what I'm doing? And that's all I know. That's all I know is like hard work, and hard work. We got to please the customer. Maybe it's my upbringing. I don't know. But how do I get them to do it? I just,
I guess what are the indicators of success that you go, okay,
quality submittals with my customer that are interviewing. So what's covered, what's not. And I keep it high level. I do not peel back on phone calls. I do not peel back on reach outs. I just don't have time for it. I've never operated in that manner. I think I tried once over 10 or 15 years ago, and it didn't work. I had everybody resign under that model because I thought I had to be something I wasn't. I was getting kind of influence from a third party, and I was like, all right, maybe I'll like change up the measurements. And it just didn't work. It doesn't match who I am. It doesn't match the type of people I want to hire, and I'll never, ever do it again. So for me, it's submittals.
What do you think, like right now with this market, what do you think, and again, it's just an opinion, but what do you think some of the mistakes that like recruitment agencies right now could potentially make, or even independent recruiters, if they're working for somebody, like what are some of the things that you would have people watch out for right now from a recruitment side?
Yeah, I'll tell you, everybody blames the client. Like, I'm on a recruiting Facebook page. I might leave.
Facebook, just leave Facebook. It's not a recruitment. It's just Facebook.
Well, I'm telling you, 95% of the comments are negative. And these are independent recruiters or people who work for agencies, and all they do is bitch. And it's like, what I'd say to you is maybe go work out or something and get a better disposition, first of all. And, look inward. Look inward. What can you do to influence the client? What can you do differently to impact results? I have a really big problem with that stuff. So I think it's universal or something, or maybe I just need to leave that group. I don't know.
Now I'm just super curious to see what group it is.
I'll tell you after.
I mean, without a doubt, the mindset is massive. And I know, even just thinking about a year ago where it was everything was uncertain, and then now it's like there's so much work and it's crazy and I just can't find candidates. I get that. So I think, disposition, having just that right mindset is massive, without a doubt. No, I love it.
Sorry to interrupt, but they've got to reach deep. If they're not finding candidates, they've got to reach deeper and think about, why the heck aren't they finding candidates? And if you're not finding candidates, are you talking to your customer and partnering them about like what the environment out there looks like? And hey, Mr. Customer, we need to kind of pivot this way in order to get this placement, because I know you want it just as bad as I do. Your revenue's impacted, mine is too, but you're on the line. So it's just excuses, like a lot of BS. So, stop the BS and be proactive. And if they're being led by somebody who's creating these obstacles, then you might want to consider something else.
And it's a great time right now And
Yeah.
you know, I'm sure maybe someone's walking by and just muting this because they're like, they don't want to hear it. But it's a great time right now. If you are a recruiter and you're not happy with where you're at, it is a great time to look for something else. There's been a rise in remote work, for example. There's a lot of agencies that are looking to get in. Hey, have you ever thought about making the switch to in-house right now as well? It's a great time to do it because literally a million jobs. That's a good question though too. Like obviously you worked in-house and I think your agency is a lot different than most agencies, and you've obviously built it that way for a specific purpose. But like if somebody was at that point where like, should I go in-house or should I say agency? Like what would be some of those things that you would look for characteristically if someone that might be a better fit for like an internal position? What type of, if someone was at that point where like, I think I'm going to get out of this or quit, what might be some things to consider for maybe going internal? Like what are some of the major differences that you saw in your time?
I think that there's blurred lines now, agencies, like businesses who are big enough that are establishing themselves with a TA department, they're scrappy. They're working like an agency, in a lot of different ways, from their sourcing tools. They've got robust ATSs.
Seems like you get way more pressure that way too, because you can't go away. You can't get away from the hiring managers if they're working with you.
Yeah, you just have to get strategic about managing them, manage the information upward, right? Yep. Don't wait for them to come to you. But, I just think it's a blurred line. If you want to work at a higher level in recruiting, I'd say go to a recruiting agency that is retained, or corporate recruiting that has a more professional, sophisticated standard, more accountability, and you're just working at a higher level in your process. The process is just working that way. Who's better for what? I don't know. Because like I said, it's like blurred lines now. So. Yeah.
No, it makes sense. I was curious if you had any insights to that, but I mean, it makes sense now. And I do think, I talked to someone else recently that said like that. I mean, some of those in-house roles as well, they are run very like an agency, and that's what they want. They want someone with an agency background.
Yep.
So, and I think it's super valuable to work in that environment as well. I mean, because then you understand, instead of guessing like, oh, these are the challenges they face. I think if you experience that, it's only going to help you in the long run as well.
Yeah.
So I love that. Well, look, I know we're up. Time is up here. We've nearly been 40 minutes, and I've loved your approach, the way that you approach business, your team, your clients, how thorough you are with your process. It's refreshing, and I think it's no surprise that you've been able to grow in the way that you have. What would be, I always end this way, in terms of somebody who's just starting and maybe they're thinking, is this recruiting thing for me? If you could just speak to them directly right now, what would be like that one piece of advice that you would give them right now with how the market is as well? What would you say to that person?
Yeah. I would just say stay the course, work very hard, look for a mentor who's done it before, and just keep your eye out on quality, the quality selection of candidates. It's really, really important to gain respect. So
I think that's the first time anyone has ever said that, which is crazy.
Isn't it?
It's really it's basic, but I mean, the thing is it's like, it's really like a simple thing to think about, but it's also really difficult to execute on. And at the end of the day, I mean, you really are only as good as your last hire in the eyes of a client. Yeah. So if you don't get that down, you're not going to grow. Well, I love it. Well, how can people get a hold of you? What's the best way for them to reach out? We'll put links here as well. But what's the best way for people to reach you?
Just Google Kathleen Steffey. I'm everywhere. Or Naviga Recruiting. We're everywhere, and LinkedIn, whatever, you'll find me. I'm everywhere. So
are you open to, are you looking to expand the team in any way? If anyone's interested, is that something that you're looking to do you have any hiring needs right now or anything that people could reach out to you about?
Yeah, I mean, they can always reach out to me, develop that relationship for future hiring. Right now, I don't have any needs, but I'm a recruiter, so definitely they could always reach out. So
awesome. Well, we'll have Kathleen's profile. Well, I should already be on the post right now, link to it, but we'll link that again. And guys, if you do reach out to her, she's running a business, so be patient. Nothing worse than it's getting spammed with the LinkedIn messages, but just be patient, and then definitely follow her across platforms. Lots of good content there. Check out the website as well. And for anyone who's listening to this afterward, I just want to thank Hoxo and Volcanic for the sponsorship. And then Kathleen, it's been an honor to have you on here. I appreciate your time today. And I'm sure you and I will connect soon too on this Facebook group, because now I'm just intrigued at whose group this is.
Thank you. Good meeting.
Great having you here. And I'm going to end this broadcast.